Hello there, you're watching World News Live from Algiers, and here's what making the headlines. Continued US economic pressure on Iran. Trump warns countries supporting Tehran of economic consequences, while the US Treasury describes the measures as the largest economic isolation in history imposed on Iran. Tehran, meanwhile, condemns the sanctions as economic terrorism and a crime against humanity. New settler attacks against Palestinians in Ramallah. UN warns of serious consequences from new settlement outposts. Human Rights Watch documents the displacement of residents from 107 villages and towns since 2023. At the conclusion of the Summer University for officials of the Sahrawi state, the Polisario Front reaffirms the Sahrawi people's commitment to restoring their sovereignty, while African diplomats and supporters renew their backing from the Sahrawis' right to freedom and independence. Welcome to our program. First, in our news, US President Donald Trump threatened severe economic consequences for any country that supports Tehran or provides it with any kind of assistance. In a post on the Truth social platform on Wednesday, Trump warned that any country that allows its financial institutions, companies, airports, or government agencies to provide any kind of support to Iran would face severe economic consequences. Trump did not specify what measures Washington would take against such countries, nor did he name any country in particular.
No one's ever given the Islamic Republic of Iran a better opportunity than me to make a deal. Unfortunately, they failed to take advantage of it. Therefore, today I am announcing the most crushing economic action ever taken against any country. This will be economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale. Their navy is gone, their air force is destroyed, their military factories are now in ruins, their currency is worthless, and their country hangs by a thread. Today I am also announcing that any country that allows its financial institutions, companies, airports, government agencies to provide any form of blockade, Iran will face dire economic consequences.
Trump added in his lengthy post that oil smuggling, currency exchanges, cash transfers, and other such activities must stop immediately, reiterating his assertion that Iran will not be allowed to possess a nuclear weapon.
Oil smuggling, currency exchange, cash transfer, money exchange offices, ship registries, shell companies, all of this must stop now. You know who you are. This will be a day of economic victory, and we need all of our allies to stand with the United States of America to isolate and defeat the Iranian threat. These madmen are in a precarious situation, and these historic measures will cripple them and their ability to spread terror around the world. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Thursday that it is time for allies and the rest of the world to stop doing business with Iran. He said the U.S. controls the Strait of Hormuz, a major oil route, and that sanctions would create the largest economic isolation in history, ultimately leading to the collapse of the Iranian regime. Iran's foreign ministry said Thursday that the tough sanctions threatened by President Donald Trump's administration amount to economic terrorism and crimes against humanity. According to a statement, the ministry said the sanctions have targeted the basic human rights of Iranians and called for those responsible to be persecuted and punished for what it described as heinous crimes. Iran warned the United States that any additional pressure on Tehran would fail. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said in a post on X on Thursday that the economic war that US President Donald Trump has threatened to launch against Iran is merely an attempt to divert attention from economic problems in the United States.
The threat of initiating economic action against Iran is, in reality, an attempt to divert American public opinion from the internal financial crises. namely the unprecedented debt and the massive rise in bank interest rates in America. Insisting on continuing these failed policies will only bring further failures and would provoke the hostility of the Iranian people. American economic terrorism threatens the global economy and the national sovereignty of countries worldwide.
Always with the Iranian file, Iran has threatened to use more lethal and destructive weapons if a new war breaks out. Brigadier General Hossein Mohamed, a spokesperson for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, said Thursday that Iran's weapons would be different in any future conflict, potentially involving warheads, accuracy, missile range, or other capabilities. He added that Iran has continued to produce and develop weapons.
We're advancing daily in all areas of combat weaponry, producing weapons with greater precision, destructive power, and more advanced technology. If a new war breaks out, our weapons will be entirely different from those of the past. This difference may manifest itself in the generation of warheads, accuracy, missile range, and any other aspect.
Axios reported, citing two U.S. officials on Wednesday, that the U.S. military has established a shipping corridor in the Strait of Hormuz, allowing 15 to 20 oil tankers a day to pass along a southern route near the Omani coast. The officials said about 10 million barrels of oil now pass through the strait daily, nearly half the pre-war level, helping ease disruptions to global supplies. They added that U.S. strikes weakened Iran's radar and maritime surveillance systems, reducing its ability to monitor traffic along the southern route. China on Thursday urged the United States and Iran to act responsibly after President Donald Trump threatened to impose sweeping sanctions on countries that assist Tehran. At a regular press conference in Beijing, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian stressed that sanctions and what he called pressure tactics are not the solution. He told reporters that China is calling on all parties to act responsibly and pursue a political and diplomatic approach.
Sanctions and pressure tactics are not the solution. China calls on all parties to act responsibly and adhere to the political and diplomatic approach.
In the occupied Palestinian territories, at least 12 Palestinians were injured in a settler attack on civilians near Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Palestinian media reported on Thursday that 12 Palestinians, including 5 children, sustained injuries of varying severity and were taken to hospitals following an attack by settlers allegedly carried out under the protection of Israel occupation forces between the villages of Al-Mughayr and Abu Falah near Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Three Palestinians were injured after being beaten by Israeli occupation forces, while 6 others were arrested during raids in Nablus and nearby towns. Palestinian news agency reported Thursday, citing the Palestinian Red Crescent. The agency said medical teams treated 3 Palestinians injured during the raid on Nablus before taking them to hospital. Occupation forces also arrested 5 Palestinians in Salam and another in Bazariya after raiding and searching their homes. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres expressed deep concern over reports of new illegal Israeli occupation settlements outposts in the occupied West Bank. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said Wednesday that such developments would have serious consequences for the territorial integrity of the occupied Palestinian territory and threaten the two-state solution. Guterres urged the Zionist occupation to halt further steps and comply with relevant UN resolutions and the International Court of Justice July 19, 2024 advisory opinion.
Deeply alarmed by reports of new illegal Israeli settlement outposts in the occupied West Bank, including new tenders, including for the E1 area. He's particularly concerned about the developments related to these E1 settlement, which would effectively sever the connection between the northern and the southern West Bank. As such, it would have severe consequences for the territorial integrity of the occupied Palestinian territory and present an existential threat to the two-state solution. The Secretary General calls on Israel to refrain from taking any further steps in this regard and to act in accordance with relevant United Nations resolutions in line with the International Court of Justice Advisory Opinion of July 19, 2024.
Human Rights Watch said Thursday that escalating settler attacks against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank have led to the complete or partial displacement of 107 villages and towns since January 2023, amid unprecedented settlement expansion. The organization said the attacks include killings, assaults, arson, and the destruction and theft of property. It added that they often occur in the presence of occupation forces or without intervention, with violence rising sharply in March and April.
Settlers' attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank have fully or partially displaced 107 communities since January 2023. Alongside unprecedented settlement expansion, the settlers responsible for the attacks operate with the financial, material, and legal backing of the Israeli state. Attacks by armed settlers often happen along Israeli army units or with soldiers standing by.
The organization also called on the international community to impose sanctions on those responsible for violations against Palestinians, suspend arms transfers to the Zionist entity, and ban trade with illegal settlements.
Countries should impose targeted sanctions on those implicated in settler violence, suspend arms transfers to Israel, ban trade with illegal settlements, and consider suspending preferential trade agreements with Israel.
The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees said Wednesday that 393 of its staff members have been killed since the start of the Israeli occupation offensive on the Gaza Strip. UNRWA said the victims included teachers, medical workers, and aid workers who provided essential services to Palestinian refugees and people in need. Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong said Thursday she was deeply disappointed by the Israel occupation's decision to close its criminal investigation into the killing of Australian aid worker Lal Zumi Frank Com and colleagues in Gaza. Wong said Australia would summon Israel's ambassador and convey its position directly to the Zionist authorities while considering further steps. She called the timing of announcement on World Humanitarian Day a profound insult to Frank Com's family, humanitarian workers, and Australians.
As I said in my statement this morning, Australia is outraged by the Israeli government's decision to not pursue any criminal proceedings against those responsible for killing Zomi Frankum and her World Central Kitchen colleagues. Australian government learned of Israel's decision late last night, moments before it was announced, on World Humanitarian Day.
UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric said Wednesday that Secretary General Antonio Guterres was deeply concerned by the US decision to sanction International Criminal Court President Tomoko Akane, and senior court lawyer Abdullah Dujarric said Guterres also remains concerned about continued sanctions on other ICC officials, stressing that while the UN and ICC are separate institutions, the UN considers the court a cornerstone of international criminal justice.
We've seen the announcement by the United States regarding the imposition of sanctions on the International Criminal Court President, Tomoko Akane, as well as a senior trial lawyer, Abdullah Issei. I can tell you that the Secretary General expresses serious concern about this designation, as well as the ongoing designation of other International Criminal Court employees. While the United Nations and the International Criminal Court are separate institutions, with separate and distinct mandates. As we've often said, the United Nations considers the ICC a key pillar of international criminal justice, and the Secretary General very much respects its work.
In Lebanon, Lebanon's national news agency reported on Thursday that the Israeli warplanes carried out a series of airstrikes overnight on Ali al-Tahrir Heights and the area around al-Dabsha on the northern outskirts of Nabatiyah al-Fawqa, as well as Duhak Far Ruman in southern Lebanon. The agency said the areas were subjected to intermittent artillery shelling until dawn. It added that the occupation forces carried out explosions in the towns of Majd al-Zoun and Mansouri overnight and at dawn, while the two towns were also targeted by artillery fire. The 14th Summer University for officials of the Polisario Front and the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic concluded Thursday in Boumerdès, Algeria, after nearly 10 days of activities attended by Sahrawi officials and supporters of the Sahrawi cause. The event focused on training and capacity building through lectures and discussions on political, legal, media, social and economic aspects of the Sahrawi issue. Sahrawi ambassador to Algeria, Khatri Abdou, described the event as a success and called for turning shared responsibility into practical steps to strengthen support for the Sahrawi people's struggle for freedom and independence.
The university in its meaning, content, and substance has been a genuine success in its 14th edition. I therefore extend my warmest congratulations to those responsible for organizing this university. This success also places further responsibility on your shoulders. You must continue developing the work and provide the necessary momentum to the rich struggle of the Sahrawi people, which will ultimately achieve its final victory: the consolidation of the sovereignty of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic over the entirety of its territory.
Sahrawi Prime Minister Boushraya Hamoudi Bioun said Thursday that Sahrawis would never abandon their pursuit of freedom and sovereignty. Speaking at the 14th Summer University in Boumerdès province, he said the Sahrawi people would continue to defend their right to existence and dignity after decades of struggle. He stressed that any solution outside international legitimacy would not resolve the conflict or ensure lasting regional stability.
We are firmly convinced that any solutions outside the framework of international legality will neither bring a definitive resolution to the conflict nor ensure stability in the region. They will not be accepted by the Sahrawi people. Any solution to this conflict must be endorsed by the Sahrawi people. It must reflect the will of the Sahrawi people, and the Sahrawi people must be consulted through a referendum and accept the proposed solution. The Sahrawi people alone have sovereignty over their land.
Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune extended his condolences to the family of Sheikh Sidi Mohamed Al-Aid Tijani, head of the Tijani Zawiya in Tamasin. In his condolence message, President Tebboune recalled the scholar's life and legacy, stressing that he combined a strong grounding in Islamic scholarship with solid academic training, as well as the role of a scholar with the responsibilities of an educator and a commitment to serving both knowledge and the community and promoting reconciliation.
It's with deep grief and great sorrow that we learn the death of the esteemed scholar and educator, Dr. Sidi Mohamed Al-Aid Tijani, Sheikh of the historic Tamasin Zawiya, and one of Algeria's prominent scholars and religious and intellectual figures, who passed away this morning. As we offer condolences to ourselves, to the bereaved family, to the sheikhs of the Tamasin Zawiya, its community and followers, and to Algeria's scholarly and national community on this grievous loss, we recall the pathway of a man whom Allah bestowed with both authenticity of Islamic scholarship and the rigor of academic education, the rank of a scholar and the responsibility of an educator, in addition to being at the service of knowledge, the service of people, and the duty of reconciliation.
Sheikh Mohamed Tijani Tamasini, head of the Tijaniya Zawiya in Tamasin, southern Algeria, has died at the age of 72. A prominent religious and academic figure, he was known for combining traditional Islamic scholarship with academic expertise in the exact sciences. Miriam Zian reports now.
Sheikh and scholar Mohamed Tijani, head of the Tijaniya Zawiya in Tamasin, in Touggourt province, southern Algeria, was one of the country's most prominent scholars and men of knowledge, combining the study of Islamic sciences in their spiritual dimension with academic expertise in the exact sciences. Sheikh Mohamed Tijani was born in May 1954 in Tamasin, Touggourt province, southern Algeria. He studied Islamic jurisprudence at the Zawiya under the guidance of his father, Sheikh al-Bashir II, while pursuing his academic studies. He obtained his baccalaureate in mathematics in 1974 from Emir Abdelkader High School in Touggourt, before enrolling at the University of Constantine, where he earned a master's degree and later a PhD in solid-state physics. Scholar Mohamed Tijani served as director of the Institute of Exact Sciences at the University of Constantine. He also held academic and teaching responsibilities in scientific research while contributing to specialized research in his field. Following his father's intellectual and spiritual footsteps, Sheikh Mohamed Tijani assumed leadership of the Tamasin Zawiya after his father's death in 2000. He continued the Zawiya's scholarly, spiritual, religious, cultural, and social mission through the teaching of the Holy Quran and Islamic sciences, the organization of scholarly gatherings and conferences, and the preservation of the region's historical memory and spiritual heritage. This work carried forward the legacy of the Tijaniya order, whose spiritual influence has extended beyond Algeria, deep into the African continent. After a long journey combining spiritual knowledge with the exact sciences, and after more than a quarter of a century at the helm of the Tijaniya Zawiya in Tamasin as a teacher and mentor, spearheading a renewed revival that brought its spiritual and cultural mission in step with the demands of the modern age, scholar Sheikh Mohamed Tijani, head of the Tijaniya Zawiya in Tamasin, passed away in the month of radiant spring at the age of 72.
Turning to the war in Ukraine, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Thursday that Russia attacked gas infrastructure in northern Ukraine's Chernihiv region and border crossing with Moldova in the Odessa region. In a post on X, Zelensky said the intensive attack involved ballistic and cruise missiles as well as drones targeting civilian infrastructure and causing as much damage as possible. The Kremlin said Thursday that several European countries, including the United Kingdom, remain involved in the conflict and are contributing to the continuation of the war in Ukraine. Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that there was little reason for optimism about prospects for a peaceful resolution, accusing Britain of deepening its involvement and encouraging other European countries to keep fighting. The Algerian delegation is determined to continue its strong performance on the continental stage at the 2026 Mediterranean Games in Taranto, Italy. Athletes from the various disciplines in which Algeria will compete said the event represents a valuable opportunity to compete against high-level opponents and gain experience, while aiming to win as many medals as possible across all categories.
We will play our first match, God willing, on the 22nd against Kosovo. Then we will manage the remaining matches against Italy, Greece, Macedonia, and Tunisia.
This brings us to the end of our news bulletin. To catch up on any part you missed or get the latest updates, you can always visit our social media platforms as well as our website. Thank you for watching.